Hey everyone, this is Curb Knight bringing you another deck profile, and today we're finally looking at Flagburg. So once again, this is yet another Orion brew. So if I'm not entirely sure the reasoning for some of the ratios or some of the deck choices, that is a question for Orion and not me. But let's go ahead and hop into Flagburg's state in the meta, which is the same place where it's been for the last year, honestly. Flagburg hasn't really been good since set 4 or set 5, around that time. And honestly, I just don't think it's going to be getting better until we finally get a new Flagburg or some actually really insane support cards. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop straight into the deck profile. Alright, so as always, starting off with the ride line, we are actually going to be playing a mix of both the Flagburg and the Zorga ride line. Of course, we are going to be playing, just whatever starter, and we're actually going to be playing Rancor Chain as our grade 1 target. So now, of course, Rancor Chain, same as ever been, Soul Blast 1, draw 2 cards, pitch in order. If you didn't, you discard 2 cards. So this is basically for early game filtering. This deck currently is built to include a lot of recursion, so you don't really minus when you discard those 2 cards. It's just seeing the pieces and keeping what you need and putting in the drop zone whatever you plan to revive later. Then of course we are playing the Ascendant's Assault. So of course he is just when your other rear guard attacks, counterblast 1 and stand him. And it's been so long since I've actually read these cards. But of course, his other skill, when he's ridden over by Flagburg, you can either reveal Flagburg or another copy of the grade 1, the inroad shooter, and then you can call him out. Otherwise, you have to soul blast a different card. And then of course, our big boy Flagburg, kind of hard to read all the SP, but when he attacks Vanguard specifically, counterblast 1, perform all depending on number of attacks, 3 or more, draw a card, 4 or more, choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards and retire them. That is a typo, but 5 or more, he gets an extra 10k, and then your opponent has to call 3 or more for the battle that he attacked. Definitely not as good as it used to be. That triple door is still kind of threatening, but we've kind of power crept to the point where Flagburg isn't that much of a problem. It's actually not that difficult to guard. We still have things like Elementaria and just generally blitz orders, and there's a lot more shield value, so it's not as big of a deal as it once was. Alright, so moving on into the main deck, of course we are just going to be playing the extra 3 copies of Persona Ride. Persona Ride with any multi-attack deck is super important because it lets you hit over defensives, kind of gives you the numbers that you need to actually, kind of deal some damage to your opponent. And then of course the only other grade 3 we are playing right now is 4 copies of the new card from BT5. This is Giant Sea Dragon Pelagic Dragon? Sure. But he is, when he's placed on rare from hand, you may soul charge 2, which if you've ever played Flagburg for any amount of time, you do know that the deck does struggle with maintaining resources, soul of course being one of them, counterblast being the other. But the main reason we have him is that at the end of the battle, he attacks a Vanguard if it is either the first or second battle of that turn, and you have a standing Flagburg. You can either counterblast 1 or EB3 in order to stand this unit, and it gets plus 10k. So basically what this card is better inlet and also kind of worse inlet because it doesn't draw cards, but it does give you resources, which you do need. And then, of course, it is able to be pretty flexible because, you have some rear guards like Ascendant's Assault that want to be the first attack. And then you have some rear guards like Miss and Eric's here that needs to be the second. So regardless of what rear guard you have on the other rear guard circle, he is able to kind of accommodate that by being either the first or the second battle. And also finally giving Flagburg access to using energy is definitely something that it needs in order to, establish itself in the current environment. All right, so moving on into the grade 2s, we were just talking about her, but we of course are playing 4 copies of the Eric's, and she is, of course, at the end of the battle, if we want to focus, there we go. So at the end of the battle that this unit attacks a Vanguard, if it is the second battle of the turn and you have a stand Flagburg, you can Soul Blast 1 to stand her, and she gets a 5k. So unfortunately, she doesn't get the 5k until after she restands, so she's just going to be swinging in at 10, so she might be swinging under at sometimes, which is a little unfortunate why you do typically want to boost her first attack, but that also makes her second attack that much weaker. which is, you know, as if Flagburg didn't have enough problems already. Anyways, moving on, we do have actually the other 3 copies of Ascendance Assault. I assume this is just in here as, you know, another restander. You do need to have literally any combination of 2 restanders, either this, or this can pair with either one of these pretty well. So just being able to find that you are always going to have the 1 Ascendance Assault, but given the state of standard right now, you're not always guaranteed, you know, keep him around. So it's better to just have access to extra multi-attackers. All right, and moving on, we do actually have 3 copies of a card that came out back in set 2. This is the Bold Brave Shooter. So he's a pretty basic unit. If you have grade 3 Vanguard with Flagburg, he gets boost, and then at the end of the battle that he attacks or boosts, you can put him into the soul to give something 5k. Probably just going to be using him as a booster. I mean, like, what you can do is, if you are going first, you can always just go call line like this, swing the Adkins boosted, that's 20k, and then when she restands, you can put this into the soul, basically refund her cost, give her another 5k, so now she's hitting 20, which does hit over a defensive. So just like small little interactions like that are why he's okay. He's not the greatest card, but once again, like I said, Flagburg is very desperate for resources, and just having another card that gives you extra soul while being like a decent beat stick or a, you know, helping you make good numbers is just kind of appreciated. And then for our last grade 2, we are just playing 2 copies of the Sea Rumble Brave Shooter. Now, normally you would kind of max out on your energy cyclers, but the fact that one of our most important pieces, of course that being the Beta Logic Dragon, is requiring EB, which you probably want to use it on that, although you don't have to, but you know the things. But anyways, just playing the 2 kind of ensures that usually you'll always, since you're always energy charging 3, you'll always have enough for this, but that typically leaves you with an extra 3 energy. So kind of just the same logic there. Just use this to get rid of the last 3 energy that you're not really able to effectively use. All right, so moving on into the grade 1s, we're going to be starting off with 4 copies of the Athelorania. So she is the only access to energy charge that we really realistically have in standard right now, at least generically. So when she's placed on rare from hand, you can energy charge 2. Like I was saying, like, even though you do need the 3 energy every single turn, this energy charges 2, which doesn't really like make good numbers on your energy, because like everything costs EB3, so you would have to call like 2 or 3 of these in order to actually benefit from that. But you know, it's there in case you want to like call 2 energy blast 7 and draw a card on your first turn, which is something funny you could do. But the main reason we do play her is that at the beginning of your battle phase, if you have grade 3 or greater tier Dragon Vanguard, you can soul blast 1, choose one of your units, it gets 1 in attacks, it gets an extra 5k. So once again, patching a little bit of that problem that this deck has with making numbers that actually do hit, especially numbers that hit over defensives, just giving you that extra 5k on that first attack and then an extra 10k on the second swing, because it does scale, it's for every single time it attacks. Just making your numbers actually threatening is pretty important for this deck. All right, so moving on, we're going to be discussing some of the revival access that this deck does have, which is mainly in the form of Arianthe. So if this is an act, so you don't actually have to place her in order to use this skill, but if you have a Flagburg, counterblast 1, discard card, choose something from your drop, call to rear, and that unit gets plus 5k. So yet another way to kind of scale our numbers a little bit higher. The main issue with this is it does discard, which, you know, Flagburg isn't really known for making a whole bunch of card advantage. Like, yeah, sure, it does draw a card, but that costs a counterblast. And of course, this also costing a counterblast means that we're really tight for resources a lot of the time. So you probably don't want to be using this every single turn unless you really need to. You'd rather like keep those attackers around and then just save them for the next turn. And then finishing off our grade 1 unit cards, we're just playing 1 copy of Cat. The extra shield value is just always nice, and technically he is also another way to soul charge too, and he gives 5k, which, you know, we've talked, everything just gives like small little increments of 5k so that maybe eventually you can scale high enough to hit over a defensive. And then of course, just finishing off the last grade 1 cards is 2 copies of Naturia Habitat. As you've been seeing, there are a lot of pieces that are very important for Flagburg to have, so just playing the 2 Habitat is very, you know, useful for you to, you know, see those pieces. Now, of course, this is, like I said, this is the only order we're actually playing in the deck, so a lot of the time you are going to be whiffing off the Rancor chain, but if you see it, you know, you get a +1, I guess. All right, so just finishing off with a lot of the basic things, of course, playing the PGs and the Elementaria because apparently I care more about this deck. I didn't even realize there was an Elementaria in this deck. All right, and then of course the trigger lineup. We do of course mandatory have to play the Chili Pepper here for very explicit reasons. I'm sure you guys all know at this point. And then of course we do have the 4 copies of Lana. You should probably play this because like I've been saying over and over again, the deck does have soul issues. Probably a little bit less so now that we have so many access to so many ways to soul charge, but you know, it's better to just have it. Of course, being a combo heavy deck and the fact that we can't really use fronts too effectively, we are playing draws. You could theoretically play fronts, but I don't think it's as good. If you're playing fronts, it's mostly for the extra, you know, 20k shield that they afford to you. Then of course, playing the heal triggers here. And of course, just playing the typical Bless Favor. Attack patterns aren't really the best for like other OTs. Like purple OT is like playable, I suppose, since you're attacking with all your rear guards first. Blue could possibly work. Red probably doesn't work at all. Yellow, if you want to be funny, but it doesn't really matter. Although yellow might actually pop off, considering that if you're doing everything right, you do retire 2 rear guards, so that's a guaranteed 1 draw off there. But anyways, just Bless Favor because it is just generically good. All right, so that's gonna do it for the deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to do all those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.